All right, hey y'all, John here, and overnight, Bitcoin prices tumbled below $40,000 US. And that's not the story here. I think there's a couple of other things that maybe need to be drawn out a little bit. Not quite sure where Bitcoin's going to be going, at least for the next little bit of the future. So what I'm talking about here is that overnight, China put new regulations on financial institutions and payment processors that provide services related to cryptocurrency transactions, and it was warning investors against speculative crypto trading. So this happens while the West is asleep, of course, and we woke up to about a 9% tumble in the value of Bitcoin, but that also drug down other cryptos like Ethereum, which fell about 12%. That's interesting, and that's not the story, because I just did a piece where another crypto expert was talking about, a 30 to 38% tumble in the value of Bitcoin is not really a big issue. It tends to happen, but is still an overall upward trend. If you've watched any of my videos, go check them out. I'm not huge on crypto. It's not a currency. It's not a stock. There's nothing to tie it to that's real. It's more like an asset class, like gold, but it's not. I'm afraid of how much it's based on hysteria, building on additional hysteria, and that can be a bubble which can collapse. I don't think it will. I think Bitcoin and its valuations, the number of people who are interested in it is going to continue to sustain it. I have a long-running, is Bitcoin the cryptocurrency that's going to be the final answer? And there was a couple of other things in this article that I read that really jumped out at me. The first one is this quote right here. Quote, "The crypto markets are extremely emotionally driven, and their participants are prone to overreacting to events they perceive as a negative." So I take that as a lot of everyday regular people like you and me. Oh my gosh, it's going up, I've got to get in. Oh my gosh, it's selling. These huge swings that you're going to see. So if we've got China doing something that drives it down, I think there'll be a bump, but I think overall there will be a downward pressure on it. But for the longer term, at least the near term, longer term, there was another quote in here which really jumped out at me. And I think this is probably the most important thing for the next 6 months, year, multiple years. Inflation has shot up as we're coming out of the pandemic. There's a lot of extra spending in the US, and it's driven inflation up. It's taken a very sharp turn upward in the past couple of months. When inflation rises, more, let's say, astute investors, they will move their money to different asset classes depending on what inflation and what the market is doing. And it's very traditional when inflation starts to rise to take it out of stocks, because that inflation is eating against your appreciation in the stock, and moving into something that's a little more stable like gold. And in here there is a quote that more traditional hedges have been gaining ground, with gold up almost 6% so far this month. So while Bitcoin's getting all the news, bigger investors are quietly moving money into gold as a hedge. They're not moving their money from traditional stocks and bonds into Bitcoin. They're moving it into gold. Now, I couldn't find numbers. I can't find the $2 trillion valuation on Bitcoin versus what's going on with gold right now. But I think it's worth keeping an eye on in the future, because if the bigger investors are not buying into Bitcoin as an asset hedge, it might keep some downward pressure on the price of Bitcoin. It's worth watching today what happens if the Bitcoin market kind of shrugs off what China's doing. Be interesting to watch and see what happens, but that move of the money to gold and not into Bitcoin as a refuge is kind of interesting to me. Let me know your thoughts below, guys.